birth of the institutionalization of truth is indeed our next stepping stone in the evolution of human civilization. The evolution of human civilization can be viewed from the eyes of history as our growing intolerance to the institution of slavery. Over time, humans have had the capacity to slowly realize that what it is that we as a people are doing to our fellow members of society is wrong, and that we must reevaluate our social principles. However, these pivotal points of evolution are few and far between amongst the lingering years when little progress has been made. It is for the ambition of overcoming this impediment that we create the institutionalization of truth that will become known as the M&M Foundation. In the United States, this evolution started with the questioning of our own principles that once allowed us to condone the physical bondage of slavery committed against our fellow brothers and sisters based on our racial, cultural, and religious indifferences. This is what led us to the American Civil War in the 19th century that ultimately outlawed the sale and ownership of people as property. With the Emancipation Proclamation in 1863 and the passing of the 13th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution in 1865, this was supposedly the end of physical bondage in the United States. However, this merely caused the redecoration of the institution of slavery from one form of physical bondage into a new form of social bondage, and the problems that continuously stemmed from this injustice evolved into the revolution of the American Civil Rights Movement that we witnessed in the 20th century, led by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.
We've got some difficult days ahead, but it really doesn't matter with me now, because I've been to the mountaintop. I don't mind. All we say to America is be true to what you said on paper. If I lived in China or even Russia or any totalitarian country, maybe I could understand some of these illegal injunctions. Maybe I could understand the denial of certain basic First Amendment privileges because they haven't committed themselves to that over there. But somewhere I read of the freedom of assembly. Somewhere I read of the freedom of speech. Somewhere I read of the freedom of press. Somewhere I read that the greatness of America is the right to protest far right. Like anybody, I would like to live a long life. Longevity has its place. But I'm not concerned about that now. I just want to do God's will. And He's allowed me to go up to the mountain. And I've looked over and I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land.
In our own day and age, here in the 21st century, we are still not entirely free of the institution of slavery. In 2018, the Global Slavery Index reported that there were 403,000 people living in conditions of modern slavery in the United States. This has demonstrated a common problem throughout history, which is the ability of the institution of slavery to merely metamorphosize itself into a more socially acceptable standard at any given time. And although we have significantly overcome these first two hurdles, we still have not made it to the promised land that Dr. Martin Luther King had envisioned in his dreams, because we have one last hurdle to overcome. This is the socioeconomic hurdle and our need to overcome the growing financial oppression of systemic debt slavery. In its final stage, the institution of slavery has managed to thrive under the economic guise of sanctity that the majority of society still fails to recognize as the ideological source of its growing demise. And although its expression in the 21st century continues to disguise itself in a variety of different forms, like that of human trafficking, racial and religious discrimination, terrorism, corporate monopolies, and even the bureaucratic control of our governments, they all have one common ideological root, which is absolutely essential for their ongoing existence in our present day and age. This capitalistic root has evolved into a socioeconomic addiction for a continuing state of debt within a type zero level continental society as it presently exists on Earth. As a result, there is one fundamental solution to this entire problem. This solution would be the elimination of the existence of all debt as a fundamental mechanism of inducing a transformational change of human civilization into a Type 1 planetary society. In modern-day society, we as human beings have created a monstrosity of problems here on the planet Earth. However, the key question that we must ask is not what we're going to do to correct these problems, simply because at this stage of its development, it is essentially unrepairable. The key question that we must ask ourselves is how do we stop supporting this degenerative socioeconomic system that continues to enslave us and start supporting the regeneration of human civilization as a Type 1 planetary society of Earth. One fundamental solution to this entire problem lies in the self-realization of an alternative pathway of hope. By assisting our members in their search for a higher purpose in life, the M&M Foundation becomes the guiding light for all humanity in the founding of a Type 1 planetary society on Earth. It is this foundation of hope which will allow humanity to free itself once and for all from the institution of slavery. This same institution of slavery is now focused on keeping humanity as ignorant as possible during the unfolding of all its political events. However, we can always turn back to the pages of history and compare notes to find the truth that we currently seek. We as human beings might not completely perceive what all these events truly represent. However, we are currently witnessing the evolution of our species as we become reborn into a new socioeconomic era of humanity. In 1971, President Nixon announced the ending of the Bretton Woods International Monetary System.
The third indispensable element in building the new prosperity is closely related to creating new jobs and halting inflation. We must protect the position of the American dollar as a pillar of monetary stability around the world. If you are among the overwhelming majority of Americans who buy American-made products in America, your dollar will be worth just as much tomorrow as it is today. The effect of this action, in other words, will be to stabilize the dollar.
However, by taking this peek back into time and fast-forwarding it to our modern-day socioeconomic situation, we can easily discern how misleading this press release was to the American people. The purpose of this was supposed to be to stabilize the US dollar against foreign exchange prospectors. However, by looking back into history, we can now see that this wasn't the sole political objective. The American people were only being told a fraction of the story in our news and political media. The truth is that Nixon, like any other president, knew the risks, but he couldn't release the information to the public because it might expose vulnerabilities to our potential enemies. We now know that this entire situation was created as a short-term cover-up to correct for the over-expenditures of the Vietnam War, and it was designed to boost his own support for his coming re-election campaign in 1972, a campaign which ultimately revealed this in time through the Watergate scandal. However, like any other presidential briefing, the true agenda and decisions made involve far more information than anything the political people are ever made aware of for years to come. Our media, political and educational systems, and our entire infrastructure for that matter, are corrupted because they only reveal 2 to 5% of the essential truth to any group of people at any given time. As a result, we as human beings are ill-equipped to make the adequate decisions required to maintain a true democracy in modern-day society. We are currently witnessing a similar dilemma that has evolved into the modern-day bloodbath concerning the politics of the Trump administration. On the Republican side, President Donald Trump refers to the situation as a witch hunt.
Should be a way of stopping it, maybe legally through the courts. It's a disgrace to our country. It's another witch hunt. Here we go again.
On the Democratic side, former Vice President Joseph Biden, Hillary Clinton, and House Speaker Nancy Pelosi are all screaming for an impeachment trial as they claim that Trump used threats of coercion to force the cooperation of the Ukrainian president.
Now, sadly, we've known who Donald Trump is for some time now. We knew he was a corrupt businessman who cheated people. We knew that he and his campaign invited foreign adversaries to tamper with our elections. And now we know that in the course of his duties as president, he's endangered us all by putting his personal and political interests ahead of the interests of the American people.
However, we as Americans have no way of knowing how deep this rabbit hole truly goes. And in a similar fashion to what happened in 1972, the American people will now be forced to make yet another decision in the upcoming presidential elections of 2020.
My guest, Shoshana Zuboff, her book, The Age of Surveillance Capitalism, The Fight for a Human Future at the New Frontier of Power.
However, the choices that humanity will once again make will only be based upon the 5% of the knowledge and truth that has been spoon-fed to us by the shadow world government that is in complete control of this plutocratic society that we live in. And without knowing the other 95% of the truth that is hidden behind all this political squabbling, our attempts to utilize democracy to try to solve our problems will be completely futile. Our only hope now is to stop looking for answers amongst this sea of deception that our media and our politicians continuously provide to us. Instead, we must completely free ourselves from the distractions of this institutionalization of deception that has been created for us in our modern-day Type 0 continental society. Our next step is the founding of an institutionalization of truth that will guide us on our exploration of a new pathway of hope. This will be the pathway that we pave together as our shared journey to the promised land that Dr. Martin Luther King spoke of in his dreams. This will be our founding of a Type 1 planetary society on Earth. To all the peoples of Earth who aspire to pursue their own goals in life, we invite you now to come pursue them within an institutionalization of truth. We invite you to find and fulfill your new roles in life as part of a more synergistic form of assistance and mentoring that we offer unto all our members.
What do you see now?
There's something powerful about setting a goal so big that there's no way you could pull it off.
They see what's happening with their kids. They see the excitement and the skill set they're beginning to come home with.
Yeah, so it's kind of a fancy, newfangled library.
This is unlike anything I've ever seen. I mean, students don't just check out books, they check out tools. They use laser cutters to create the thing they actually drew in their notebook one day. It's amazing to watch kids just flourish in an environment where there aren't any barriers.
Within this new infrastructure, together we shall seek to establish new businesses, institutions, and organizations that will provide our socioeconomic needs on this journey to the promised land. As we share these new roles with all our fellow members of humanity, we seek to provide them as part of a unique opportunity that will allow us to get a head start in a new lifestyle. As we continue to expand the diversity of this infrastructure, we will encourage every member to pursue their own set of goals as part of an altruistic destiny in life. A destiny that guides us to our higher purpose and greater potential in life. A potential that will become our ongoing expression of this provisional Type 1 planetary society of Earth. As we work together in synergy to achieve these goals, we say unto you, all that is ours is yours.